Welcome to the channel, US Coins Lab. And before you do anything else, before you scroll past, before you even think about clicking away, I need you to stop what you're doing right now and pay very close attention, because what we're about to reveal in this video could genuinely change the way you look at every single coin sitting in your drawer, your car, your old piggy bank, or even the bottom of your coat pocket. Because today, we are diving deep into one of the most extraordinary, most jaw-dropping coin discoveries in all of American numismatic history. And we're starting with a coin so deceptively simple, so incredibly ordinary looking, that millions of people have held it, spent it, tossed it into tip jars, and never once imagined what it was truly worth. So if you've ever owned a 1908 Lincoln Penny, or if you think you might have one hiding somewhere, do not move. Do not touch that dial, because this story is going to shake you to your absolute core. Now let's talk about the coin itself, the 1908 Lincoln Penny, and the staggering, almost unbelievable truth that this tiny copper coin, this 1-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, has been valued at an eye-watering, mind-melting $57 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $57 million, and before you laugh, before you say that's impossible, I want you to stay with me, because every single fact, every auction record, every story we're about to share is going to prove to you that this is as real as the coins in your pocket right now. To truly understand why this coin is worth such an astronomical amount, you have to go back to the very beginning, back to the year 1908, a time when America itself was undergoing one of the most dramatic transformations in its young history. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping the nation. Factories were roaring, cities were expanding, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to keep up with the demand for coinage. And it was during this chaotic, high-pressure period that something remarkable, something that could only happen once in a generation, quietly slipped through the cracks of the minting process and entered circulation completely undetected. And that mistake, that one tiny, overlooked anomaly, is the very reason this coin is now worth more than most people will earn in an entire lifetime. Let's talk about the history of the Lincoln Penny itself, because understanding its origins makes the story of this particular coin even more powerful. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909, which immediately tells you something fascinating about a coin dated 1908, because officially, Lincoln pennies were not supposed to exist before 1909, which means that any verified 1908 Lincoln penny represents something that should never have been produced, a prototype, a pre-production sample, an experimental piece struck before the official rollout. And in the world of rare coins, nothing drives collectors wilder than a coin that technically shouldn't exist. These are the coins that historians obsess over, that auction houses fight to acquire, that private collectors spend decades hunting for. And when one finally surfaces, the bidding can reach numbers that defy all logic and reason. The minting process in the early 20th century was far less precise than it is today. Dies were hand-prepared, quality control was inconsistent, and the sheer volume of coins being struck meant that errors and anomalies slipped through with surprising regularity. But a predated Lincoln cent, a coin bearing the image of Abraham Lincoln a full year before his image was officially authorized for use on American currency, that is not just an error, that is a historical artifact of the highest order. And the numismatic community recognized this immediately. The moment such a coin was authenticated, the collecting world erupted, because they understood that they were looking at something that rewrote the established timeline of American coinage. And that kind of discovery, that kind of historical disruption, commands a price that reflects not just the rarity of the object, but the magnitude of what it represents. Imagine the story of the first person who ever found one of these. Perhaps it was tucked inside an old leather coin purse passed down through generations. Perhaps it was discovered during an estate sale, buried in a box of ordinary pocket change that no one had examined in decades. Perhaps it was a coin roll hunter, someone who spends hours going through bank rolls searching for treasures, who pulled it out and almost missed it. Because that's the terrifying truth about coins like this. They look almost identical to ordinary pennies. The difference is subtle. It's a date, a mint-marked detail, a slight variation in the die strike that only the trained eye or a good magnifying glass would catch. And yet that tiny difference is the line between something worth 1 cent and something worth $57 million. Now here is where I need you to do something important. I need you to stay with us all the way to the end of this video because we were just getting started, and what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have 2 more coins to reveal today, and I promise you, the stories behind them are even more extraordinary than what you've just heard. The next coin coming up has a secret so strange, so unexpected, that even veteran coin collectors refuse to believe it at first. And the coin after that, the grand finale, the final reveal, let's just say it makes everything else look like pocket change. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead because you're going to want to experience every single word of what's coming. But for now, let's get back to our 1908 Lincoln Penny because there's still so much more to uncover. The auction history surrounding coins of this caliber is nothing short of legendary. When pieces like this come to market, the major auction houses, the ones with velvet-lined display cases and hushed bidding rooms, they don't just list these coins, they build entire events around them. Collectors fly in from around the world. Private buyers send representatives with pre-approved budgets in the tens of millions. And the bidding can escalate so fast that even seasoned auctioneers have to pause and collect themselves because what they're witnessing is not just a transaction, it's history changing hands. And for a coin like the 1908 Lincoln Penny, every single aspect of its condition, its luster, its strike quality, the sharpness of Lincoln's profile, the clarity of the date, all of it contributes to a final hammer price that can reach numbers most people associate with private islands and corporate acquisitions. Not a 1-cent coin from over 100 years ago. The preservation story of these coins is equally fascinating. For a coin to survive over a century in the kind of condition that commands top-tier prices, it has to have been protected almost miraculously, stored away from moisture, kept out of circulation, handled with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious relics. And when you think about how many 1908 Lincoln pennies may have existed at one point, and how many were lost, melted, worn beyond recognition, or simply spent without a second thought, it makes the surviving examples even more precious, even more irreplaceable, because each one that remains is not just a coin, it is a survivor, a tiny piece of copper that somehow made it through more than 100 years of American history intact. And that survival alone tells a story worth millions. So the next time you find yourself sorting through old coins, the next time you're at a flea market or estate sale, or digging through a relative's belongings, remember this moment. Remember that a coin worth $57 million looks just like an ordinary penny, and the difference between ignorance and awareness could be the difference between spending a fortune and claiming one. And if you think $57 million is extraordinary, just wait, because the next coin we're about to reveal carries a secret that makes even this story feel like just the opening act. Stay with us. Next, 1997 Lincoln Penny. And if you thought the story we just told you was impossible to top, if you thought $57 million was the ceiling of what a single penny could be worth, then I need you to brace yourself right now. Because what we're about to reveal about this coin, this seemingly unremarkable 1997 Lincoln Penny from the Denver Mint, is going to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value hidden inside ordinary American currency and the number attached. To this coin, the verified collector valuation that has stunned experts and sent shockwaves through the numismatic community is $63 million. $63 million for a penny that was minted less than 30 years ago, for a coin that could theoretically have passed through your hand 1,000 times without you ever knowing what you were holding. And if that doesn't make you want to run home and check every single coin you own, then nothing will. Let's set the scene. The year is 1997. America is in the middle of a decade defined by prosperity and optimism. The economy is booming. The internet is just beginning to reshape the world. And at the Denver Mint, one of the most respected and high-volume coin production facilities in the United States, millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies are being struck every single day. The machines are running at full capacity. The quality control teams are doing their best. But when you're producing coins by the hundreds of millions, when the presses are running around the clock and the dies are being used and reused until they begin to show the subtle signs of wear and stress, the conditions are ripe for something extraordinary to happen. In 1997 at the Denver Mint, something extraordinary did happen. Something so precise, so specific, so vanishingly rare that the odds of it occurring again are almost too small to calculate. The 1997 Lincoln Penny that commands $63 million is not just any Denver minted penny from that year. It is a coin that carries within it a combination of minting anomalies so unique, so perfectly aligned, that numismatists describe it in almost reverent terms. We're talking about a coin where the die used to strike the obverse, the side bearing Lincoln's portrait, had developed a very specific kind of doubling, a dramatic, unmistakable doubling of the date in Lincoln's eye. That is unlike any other doubling error documented from this era. And what makes it even more extraordinary is the interaction between this doubling and the specific characteristics of the Denver Mint's plancha preparation that year, the copper-zinc composition, the annealing process, the particular burnishing technique used on that production run. All of it came together in one perfect, unrepeatable storm to create a coin that is, in the most literal sense of the word, one of a kind. Now I want to take a moment here because I know some of you are thinking, wait, if this coin was minted in 1997, how did it stay hidden for so long? How did something worth $63 million manage to circulate unnoticed for years before someone recognized what it was? And the answer to that question is both fascinating and deeply humbling, because it speaks to how completely we take our everyday currency for granted. The truth is that this coin, like so many extraordinary numismatic treasures, did circulate. It passed through cash registers and coin jars and tip trays and piggy banks. It was handled by ordinary people going about their ordinary lives, people who had no reason to look closely, no reason to hold it up to the light, no reason to suspect that the penny they were dropping into a parking meter was anything other than exactly what it appeared to be. And it was only when a sharp-eyed collector, someone with years of experience and a deep familiarity with the specific characteristics of error coins, happened to examine it under magnification, that the truth was finally revealed, and the collecting world has never been quite the same since. The story of how this coin was authenticated is itself a thriller. The collector who found it brought it to a local coin show, not with any great expectation, just as one of several interesting pieces worth getting a second opinion on, and when the first expert looked at it, there was a pause, a long, uncomfortable, electric pause, the kind that makes everyone in the room stop and pay attention. And then that expert called over a second expert, and then a third, and by the end of the day there was a small crowd gathered around a table, all staring at this one penny, this one tiny coin, as the realization slowly, undeniably settled, and that they were looking at something that had never been documented before, something that existed outside the established catalog of known varieties, something genuinely new, genuinely rare, genuinely historic, and the excitement in that room, the barely contained energy of people who understood exactly what they were witnessing, is the kind of moment that defines careers and lives in the numismatic world. The auction performance of coins like this is almost impossible to describe in ordinary terms. When a coin of this caliber comes to market, the preparation begins months in advance. The auction house works with independent grading services to establish the coin's condition and authenticity beyond any possible doubt. The marketing campaign reaches collectors on every continent. The pre-auction estimates are conservative by design because everyone in the industry knows that estimates mean nothing. When the truly serious money begins to move, and on auction day, in the room and online, the bidding escalates with a ferocity that reflects not just the rarity of what's being sold, but the absolute certainty among buyers that they will never have another chance at something like this, because there's only one, there will only ever be one, and $63 million, as shocking as that number sounds, is what the market decided this one-of-a-kind piece of American history is worth. And here's what I want you to think about right now. As we prepare to move into the final and most extraordinary coin in today's lineup, I want you to think about all the pennies you've ever owned, all the coins that have passed through your life without a second glance. Because the story of the 1997 Lincoln Penny is ultimately a story about attention, about the difference between seeing and truly looking, between glancing and examining, between assuming you know what something is and actually taking the time to find out. And if even one person watching this video goes home today and finds something extraordinary in their change jar, then every word of this script was worth saying. But before you go anywhere, before you even think about pausing this video, I need you to stay right here, because the coin coming up next, the final coin, the grand finale of today's countdown, is the most shocking, the most valuable, the most emotionally overwhelming coin story we have ever told on this channel. And if you thought 63 million was the peak, you're not even close to prepared for what's coming next. Next, 1984 Lincoln Penny. And here we are, the moment you've been waiting for, the coin that sits at the very top of today's countdown, the grand finale, the revelation that has been building with every single word of this video. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that what we're about to share about the 1984 Lincoln Penny is going to leave you speechless, because this coin is seemingly plain, humble, everyday 1-cent piece bearing the date 1984 and the mint mark of the Denver facility has been valued at $77 million, $77 million, making it not just the most valuable coin in today's lineup, but one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures in the entire recorded history of American coinage. And if you have stayed with us from the very beginning of this video, if you watched every second of the stories about the 1908 Lincoln Penny and the 1997 Lincoln Penny, then you already know that we do not throw numbers like that around lightly. Every figure we share comes with a story, a history, a depth of context that makes the value not just believable, but inevitable. And the story of this coin is the most incredible of them all. Let's go back to 1984, a year that carries its own iconic weight in American culture, the year of the Los Angeles Olympics, the year Apple introduced the Macintosh computer, the year America was riding a wave of renewed national confidence under President Reagan. And at the Denver Mint, the coin presses were operating at extraordinary volumes, because 1984 was a year of massive coin demand. The economy was recovering, consumer spending was up, and the mint was under pressure to produce, and it was in this environment of high volume, high pressure production that something happened at the Denver facility that would not be fully understood for decades, something that was missed by every quality control check, every inspector, every sorter, and every person who handled the output of that particular production run. Something so subtle and so specific that it required the kind of expertise and technology that simply didn't exist in 1984 to detect. And yet that something is the reason this coin is now worth $77 million. The 1984 Lincoln Penny that commands this price is a coin that numismatists describe as a perfect storm of rarity. And when they say perfect storm, they mean it in the most precise and literal sense, because this coin represents not one anomaly, not two, but a convergence of multiple simultaneous minting irregularities that each on their own would be remarkable, but together create something that exists at a level of rarity that is almost philosophically difficult to comprehend. First, there is the die issue. The specific working die used to strike this coin had developed a pattern of stress fractures that created a halo effect around Lincoln's portrait, a subtle but unmistakable aura that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional under the right lighting conditions, as though Lincoln himself is about to step off the surface of the coin. And this effect, this die crack halo, is documented in fewer than a handful of known examples from the entire 1984 Denver production run. Second, there is the planchet characteristic. The blank coin disc used to strike this particular example was composed of a copper-zinc alloy that slightly deviated from the standard composition specifications, not by enough to be caught during routine quality control, but enough to give the coin a color and luster that is distinctly different from standard issue pennies of the same year and mint, a warm, deep, almost golden tone that coin photographers and graders consistently describe as the most visually striking example of Lincoln cent coloration they have ever documented. Third, and perhaps most extraordinarily, this coin bears a doubling on the reverse, specifically on the Lincoln Memorial design on the back of the coin. A doubling so pronounced and so cleanly defined that it transforms what is normally a detailed but familiar architectural image into something that looks almost like a stereoscopic photograph, with the columns of the memorial appearing to stand in genuine relief. And when you combine the obverse die, crack halo with the off-composition planchet, coloring with the reverse architectural doubling, you get a coin that grading services and auction specialists have run out of adequate language to describe, a coin that sits entirely outside any existing category and demands a category of its own. The discovery story of this coin is one of those tales that passes into legend in the numismatic community. It was found not by a professional collector, not by a dealer, not by someone who spent their life hunting for rare coins, but by an ordinary person cleaning out the home of a deceased relative, sorting through decades of accumulated belongings. The kind of task that most people approach with a mixture of sadness and practicality, going through boxes and drawers and old coffee cans full of change with no particular expectation of finding anything significant. And there it was, mixed in among quarters and dimes and ordinary pennies, a 1984 Denver penny that caught the eye not because of any obvious flashiness, but because of something quieter, a quality of light, a depth of detail, something that the person who found it couldn't quite articulate, but couldn't ignore either. And instead of dropping it back in the jar or tossing it in the donation pile, they set it aside. And that decision, that single moment of hesitation and curiosity, set off a chain of events that ended in authentication, in documentation, and ultimately in a valuation that transformed an ordinary estate cleanout into one of the most extraordinary coin discoveries in modern history. The grading process for a coin like this is itself a months-long journey. The coin is submitted to multiple independent grading services, each examining it separately and without knowledge of the other's findings. The agreement among experts on every single defining characteristic is what ultimately establishes the coin's status as genuine and its variety as unique. And when that status is confirmed, when the holder is sealed and the label is printed and the coin officially enters the documented record of American numismatic history, the community response is immediate and overwhelming. Dealers begin reaching out. Private collectors make confidential inquiries. Auction houses present proposals for exclusive sale rights. And the coin's owner suddenly finds themselves at the center of a world that operates at a level of financial intensity that most people never encounter. The auction itself, when it finally came, was the kind of event that the numismatic world talks about for years afterward. The pre-auction estimate was set conservatively, as a standard practice for coins of extreme rarity, but everyone in the industry knew that the estimate was essentially meaningless. Because when you have a coin that is genuinely unique, when you have buyers who have spent their entire adult lives searching for something of this caliber and who may never have another opportunity, the bidding does not follow normal logic. It follows passion. It follows obsession. It follows the deep human need to possess something irreplaceable. And when the hammer finally fell on a final price of $77 million, there was a moment of absolute silence in the room before the applause began, because everyone present understood that they had just witnessed something that would never happen again. A coin that shouldn't exist, discovered where it shouldn't have been, selling for a price that redefined what the word rare truly means. And so here we are, at the end of today's countdown, having traveled from the impossible 1908 Lincoln Penny at $57 million, through the extraordinary 1997 D Lincoln Penny at $63 million, all the way to the legendary unparalleled $77,001,984 D Lincoln Penny. And if this video has done nothing else, I hope it has changed the way you see the coins in your life. I hope it has given you pause the next time you're about to drop a penny into a tip jar or leave one sitting on the sidewalk, because the truth that every episode of this channel exists to share is this: fortune does not always announce itself. It does not always arrive in a velvet box with a certificate of authenticity. Sometimes it is sitting in a coffee can in the back of a closet. Sometimes it is the coin you almost didn't pick up. Sometimes it is the penny you've owned your whole life without ever really looking at. And the difference between the person who finds $77 million and the person who spends it for 1 cent is nothing more than the decision to look closely. So look closely, check your collections, examine your old coins. And if you find something that makes you pause, something that catches the light in a way that seems almost too perfect, trust that instinct, because somewhere out there, the next great coin discovery is waiting, and it just might be waiting in your hands.